Jennifer, Castlebar Educate Together National School was due to open its doors next week, but children will have to wait at least another year to attend the multi-denominational school, as it's been deferred until at least 2016 after the school rejected the site offered by the Department of Education. Jarlath Munnelly, Educate Together's Regional Development Officer for Ireland West, is on the line, and also is Tony Geraghty, the parent of a child who is due to attend the school. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Pat.
Tony, we'll go to you first. Can you hear me loud and clear?
I can indeed, Pat. Good morning.
Now, Tony, first of all, why did you want your child to go to an Educate Together school?
Well, it was a choice of a number of parents for different reasons. So we have people from no faith, from the Protestant faith, people who haven't declared their faith. So different parents have different reasons. But our own was that we like the ethos of Educate Together. Yeah. It promotes equality, the gender issue. Gender stereotyping is quite strong in that. There are a range of issues, but I have to be fair to the other parents. There were a whole range of different issues where people chose to do it.
Anyway, you wanted your child to go to an Educate Together school, and there was the promise of one in Castlebar. Ultimately, a site was offered, which is out the road a bit, shall we say. What was wrong with that site from a parent's perspective?
The first thing that struck us was how poor a quality the building was. So it was very close to dereliction, with no toilets, no insulation, an old school that hasn't been used in decades as a school. I think it has been used as a kind of a community hall or a band practice hall, but it hasn't been used as a school.
Okay, but it closed down, 20 years ago or something like that?
More. I'd say close to 40 years ago.
40 years ago as a school?
Yes.
And when was it built? It looks to me, I've seen pictures of it. I mean, it's fairly typical of a lot of small schools in the west of Ireland. Many of them are whitewashed. This one is not. Slate roof, whitewashed walls, very simple construction. You see them dotted all over Connemara. Yeah. That kind of school.
That's the type of school, yes. From the early 1900s.
Okay.
There's any amount of them around Ireland, yes.
Now, you can take a building, you can refurb it, you can insulate it, you can put new glazing in, you can put in new toilets, you can do all sorts of things if you've got the money, and the department was promising to do that.
That's correct, yes.
So was there anything else? If all that had been done, would it have been perfect?
I'm conscious that I'm in the unique position, and when we had a vote amongst the parents, I was the only parent who actually voted to go out to the school. But everybody else suggested that they wouldn't use that particular building or that building in that site. And in fairness to those parents, rather than they sound like being slightly spoiled, the Department of Education themselves did a report in 2012 and published that report on their website, where they themselves asked the potential parents of kids if it's within the town, how many are interested, and if it's so many miles or kilometres outside the town. And beyond 6 to 10 kilometres, the people who are interested in going to school drops from 100% to 16%. So you lose almost 85% of potential parents by moving that many kilometres outside of the town. So they themselves knew that siting at a distance outside the town was an issue.
Okay, because it means there's got to be a school bus, or there has to be parents driving kids to school.
Absolutely, yes. And the inconvenience of getting out a narrow road that doesn't really go anywhere. It's not a main thoroughfare, it's not a national primary route. And people weren't familiar with the road, in fairness, or the site. So we didn't know that when the announcement came out initially. We went out to see this school. I'd never seen it before. And then we had a meeting and we discussed it, and we voiced quite strongly to Educate Together that this isn't a runner, that we are not going to get any parents to send their kids out to that school in that area, of those that were members of the group.
The school was there, of course, for a reason. There must have been a population to serve that school back in the day. What's the situation there now? Is it a place denuded of population, or are there houses around, and are there shops?
It's very low population, in fairness. I think many years ago the towns were much smaller back then. So, there was a much larger rural community, and there were many more small schools. But the trend has been for larger schools. It brings with it more facilities, and they're trying to amalgamate small schools in areas. There's also been the depopulation out there. It's quite a barren. It's a beautiful landscape now, absolutely fantastic. It's called the Windy Gap. Locally, people will know of it. It goes out to a town called Laherdon. The most beautiful drive in Mayo, I would suggest. But there's nobody living out there. Very, very few people. There are 11 schools in the Castlebar area. This would be number 12 were it to open. But it closed for a reason. And it closed because there was no support for it.
There's no support. So if there had been a site available closer to the town or in the town, there would be a healthy enrolment for the Educate Together school.
There would be a healthier enrolment if we had sorted that out earlier. There was a smaller enrolment number because of the uncertainty of whether it was going to open or not. But if you just don't take my figures, go to the department's own figures. They surveyed 5 towns in 2012 and they published this information publicly, and they themselves said that there was a massive demand for diversity within schools, and the one that came top of that was the patron to be Educate Together. There were other options, and there was a massive demand for that in the town.
Now, this row, I should talk to Jarlath about this. Jarlath, this row has been going on for some time. The department working towards bringing it up to standard. How much work had they done?
None.
None?
No work at all. None. No work on that building.
So when was it inevitable that this could not open? Because the kind of work, by the description we got from Tony, a lot of work would need to have been done to bring it up to standards of heat, insulation, dampness, toilets, all the rest of it. You'd imagine they would have started it sometime, maybe January, February of this year. Nothing has been done.
No, nothing has been done with that building. Apart from the local community out there, I have to give them credit. Have done their best to keep that building going, and it's been used by a community group. And full credit to them, and they've done it off their own bat. Just one thing I want to say very quickly. We were ready to open this school next week. We had identified temporary accommodation in Castlebar town where we could open this school. And that's the most horrifying thing, I suppose, about all this. But just to answer your question, no, that particular building, no work has been done on it. And Educate Together had indicated our issues with this building last November.
So the department actually clearly believed you then, because if they thought they could have resolved this issue, they would have started the refurb, but they have not.
Well, in fairness, they had a process to go through which included planning, and firstly they had to determine whether or not they needed planning permission. But, I mean, be that as it may, I think what's very important for people to understand is that Educate Together didn't just sleepwalk into this and say, should that be fine? We expressed reservations about this building before it was announced. Then shortly after it was announced, we had a meeting in Castlebar. Tony will recall this. And there was a very strong reaction from, not just from parents, but from the community in Castlebar, from various different parties, different interest groups in the town. And I have to say, it frequently comes up in conversation since about the proposal. And there's a very strong feeling amongst people in Castlebar who would support an Educate Together school. That's not the place for it. It should be in the town, and that wasn't a good idea.
All sorts of conflicting stories, though. All sorts of conflicting stories that you actually accepted this site as an organisation, Educate Together. You have denied that, though. You say you never accepted it. You accepted the notion that there would be an Educate Together school in Castlebar, but you never accepted that site. Now, is there some confusion here? Could the department have been under the impression that you did accept it?
Well, there clearly is confusion. And, I think it's a shame that that's sort of the issue, and I wouldn't like it to dominate, I suppose, this conversation. But absolutely, we discussed this with the department, and they did indicate to us about this school, and we expressed our reservations about it. So I don't think anybody anywhere can say that there was certainty around our views on it. They knew there was trepidation there, and we expressed that very clearly. At no point, I suppose the process as well is quite loose, and at no point did we express this in writing that we were happy to go ahead with this. We were happy to proceed in Castlebar. We were happy to proceed. And really, I just want to contextualise this for a moment. It's not that uncommon in Educate Together, unfortunately, that we would open schools without a clear sight as to where the school is going to be. Indeed, there are other schools that have opened through the divestment of patronage process, and that's the case. There wasn't clear sight as to where the end school building is going to be. This wasn't exactly a new situation to be in. For the issue around the school accommodation to be up in the air at the point at which we were recruiting the principal, offering places to parents, that wasn't new territory to us, and that shouldn't be the case. But that is the fact, and I suppose that's the point that's very disappointing in this.
Now, the reason that you cannot go ahead in the temporary accommodation is what exactly? Has the minister said we're not funding that? Yes,
basically that's it in a nutshell. We were given a choice at the start of this week. We were given 2 choices by the department. The first choice was you can proceed in temporary accommodation that we had identified in the town on condition that we give a written undertaking that we would, once that building in Burren was ready, that we would move out there.
Yeah.
Our choice number 2 was to defer the opening of the school for a year and to explore other options. Now, there was no choice. As far as we were concerned, there was no choice.
Yeah, because there is a possibility, by the way, that if you had moved out to that place and the lovely refurbed school and so on, but that you would never get the critical level of numbers that you needed to make the school viable.
And that's fundamentally the point that I suppose my colleagues in Educate Together have been making.
And the school would then, having been refurbished, the school would then close.
Absolutely. It would be very wrong of us to not have identified those points and to express them clearly at the very start. And, a couple of things would come out of that. It would be cited as a white elephant or a waste of taxpayers' money, but it would also be damaging, we felt, to the divestment of patronage process, that it would undermine it, and that it would say, critics could say, well, look, there's no demand for that school. What are those people talking about? They got a school there and nobody went to it. And whereas we identified very early on that the problem with the school is really one of access, is one of location.
Location.
Absolutely, and there's a historical evidence to suggest that too from the history of when it was a Catholic school.
Okay, what will happen to the 10 children whose parents have registered them for the Educate Together school? Will they simply have another year waiting to go to school, or are they in other schools now?
Well, that's I suppose the most distressing part of all this has to be children and parents and their family, and conversations that I've had with parents who wanted an equality-based education for their children. They thought that had that opportunity, and it's been taken away from them. And I certainly feel a real sense of guilt around that, I have to say. So those parents are pursuing other options now, as in looking at other schools. There's been quite a bit of coverage on the whole issue of access to schools. I suppose Castlebar wouldn't have a huge oversubscription of schools issue, which is fortunate in this instance. But to focus on that would really miss the point.
Okay, the people have schooling for their children if they want to pursue that schooling.
Absolutely.
But are you hopeful that there will be some resolution to your problem by this time next year?
I am hopeful, and I mean, I think it's imperative that there is. This is fundamentally about. It's not about arguments between the department and Educate Together, or this is fundamentally about families having a right to pursue a particular type of education for their children. Okay. And Castlebar is one of those towns in Ireland. And there are more that don't have that choice.
Okay, quick question to you from Judy on my text screen. We keep hearing that massive numbers want an Educate Together school, but in a big town like Castlebar, they've only 10 kids enrolled for this year. Not massive then, says Judy.
Well, I think that's a good point. And can I just explain that it's not uncommon for schools to start with small numbers, particularly when you're talking about the schools starting with infants. So we wouldn't be taking in, people 5th and 6th class. So the tendency is to start school just small with infants. We have a school starting in Tuam next week. We're expecting 11 kids. I started school maybe 3 or 4 years ago in Dublin 15 with, I think, 6 or 7 children. And there's probably 150 children in that school now. So our experience has been, and I can only talk about our experience, schools start small and they grow rapidly.
Yeah. That school in Sligo, huge project, small population children, plenty of spaces available.
Well, I think that's a particular case, and I mean, I suppose what I can talk to you about is, where we've started new schools, and the tendency has been start small, grown very rapidly.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering, was the demand in Sligo overestimated?
Well, no, I don't think so. And I think there's a unique situation with that school. I really don't want to get into that now, but I mean, that school has got its own set of issues that are going on, and I don't think it'd be fair to go
another story that I have to pursue.
Absolutely.
All right, we leave it there. Jarlath Munnelly, Educate Together's Regional Development Officer for Ireland West, and before that we were speaking to Tony Geraghty, a parent of a child who had wished to go to that Educate Together school had it been in the right place and opening at the right time.